Ask the Podcast Coach for January 9th, 2021.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music. It means, hey, it's Saturday. It's 10:30. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there from theaverageguy.tv, the one and only Jim Cullison. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy second Saturday of the year. We almost didn't make it to the second Saturday. I thought it was 2021. I thought the year was going to be better. It's been a little crazy here in the U.S., right?
That's it. I'm like,
we're not going to talk
close.
Politics, but
did somebody forget to close the door on 2020?
It had to just sneak in. We had to. It kind of sneak in. One more hurrah, right?
Yeah. So.
Well, but you know what's always good though?
Oh, what is coffee?
Coffee's always good. Let's do a pour.
It's a good way to start your day, and and that coffee pour course is brought to you by the one and only podcastbranding.co. If you don't know Mark, you should, doggone it, because the guy does really good work. If you need a new logo, I was actually thinking about using Mark for my weight loss podcast today, because I went to put my artwork on a t-shirt and I was like, you know what? Artwork doesn't work. Might need a logo, but if you need a logo, if you need new artwork, if you need a new website, he makes really pretty websites. Of course, he makes really pretty everything. And the great thing about Mark, not only is he an award-winning artist, he's also a podcaster, so he gets it. And he's actually going to go over and listen to your show and work with you side by side to make sure that your artwork fits your brand. So if you're, two dudes, one brain show, he's not going to have it looking super sophisticated because, well, that's not your show. And you like to do fart jokes and things like that. He's going to make sure that your brand fits your show. And what's great about it is he's Canadian. Why is that great? Because he's polite. Because he's Canadian. And so if you're looking for great looking, awesome fitting artwork, website, etc., well, then you got to go over and see the polite Canadian Mark at podcastbranding.co. All right, Jim, here's
hold on before you move on. Mark redid the graphic design work for the Cigar Authority. So if you want to see it, well, everybody's different on tobacco, but if you want to see some of Mark's work, he did a really nice job. They launched it last week on their first show of the year. They launched his artwork and they've got new merch. I mean, Dave Garofalo does it right over there at Cigar Authority.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. He did a really good job.
Is it on their website yet or anything
where
we can see it?
Yeah, the cigar. Here, why don't I just share it so we can get it?
Yeah, there we go.
We can bring it in. We have this technology called sharing that apparently works. So
it's new.
Let's bring.
Hey, while we're using StreamYard, that was news this week. StreamYard got what was it? 200 was, I don't know, it was a lot of money, millions and millions. I think it was 250, because I remember thinking it was two guys that started this company, and they've got to be pretty happy.
I'm trying to share, Dave, but it's not working on my end for whatever reason. Yeah,
and it's the cigar,
the Cigar Authority.
Authority. Oh, the pressure of typing. It's hard. There it is. Okay, so very cool. All right, now I have to.
I might disappear for a second. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Things are going a little weird. All right.
Yeah,
well, I will.
Well, I'm going to leave it, hoping it just does. It self-corrects itself. But we'll see.
Well, what's interesting about this is, of course, Jim talked about the Cowbell. Originally said it should go away, and then it came back, and they've now used that in their logo, which is kind of cool up here at the top. That's
everything's stuck up on my end. I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Do I need to kick you out so you can come back in? Oh, the joy. And he can't hear anything either, apparently. Huh. Jim. All right, I'm going to kick him out. He's been officially removed, which is interesting because now if I add him to the stream, nope, now he's got a black screen. And I'm worried if I eject him from the whatchamacallit, that he will, I don't want to ban. I don't want to ban. That is cool. I didn't realize you can ban people from coming back in. That's new. I can kick him from studio. See, I'm worried if I kick him from the studio, even though it's different than banning, that he won't be able to get back in. So I'm going to remove him. I'm assuming he will, I'll be watching to have him come back in. What I want to do is put me up there. There we go. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to play a clip while we're waiting for Jim to come back. And this is courtesy of the Podcast Movement Facebook group and Jared Easley. And this is for anyone who thinks I don't have to do editing of my show. Now, this is a parody. This is some guy in Britain who decided to make a thing making fun of people. Let me see if I can get the link for you. Yes. So links in the show notes at askthepodcastcoach.com/327, I believe is today's episode. And it goes a little something like this.
So that's what I think. Yeah, that's so true. You know, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think this is really important. And if I can just speak about this for a minute, because I've really been thinking about this quite a lot. And here's the thing, right? Here's when it all comes down to it and we like really begin to understand, like, this is what I think. But this is why we have you on. It's my opinion. So my friend works at the New York Times, right? Oh, nice. Yeah. And so this is what I think. There's a lot of conversation and there's a lot of dialogue around the subject without really dissecting and understanding the subject. And I think what we really need, and I've said this before, I've said this on my podcast, if people want to check that out as well, but we'll put the link in. I think what's really important is that we generate more conversation around, what we're doing right now. Yeah. You know? Yeah. This kind of, like, it's so important. No, for sure. It's so important. It's so important. It really is. Like, we need really this. Yeah.
So this is on a Twitter. It's a tweet from Jonathan Ogden, and it says podcasts saying literally nothing for 20 minutes. And I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I was like, I think he has a point. I think there are people that actually do that, and they're like, it's especially when he's like, yeah, this is why we need to say that. Oh, absolutely. That's why you're here. Live your truth. I was trying to think of all the fun-filled cliches. Live your truth is another one that I just kind of go, as opposed to live your lie. I don't know. I find some of these things that people say all the time that I'm like, huh. But I do hear podcasts like that, and I go in. That's why I say you need to edit your show, because that was just a few minutes, and they never really actually said anything. They just talking something. So Jim is having a PC meltdown. So that's always fun. And that's why I go out. Of course, if you want to join, Andy's back. But is he back for real? He's thinking about it. It's a tough, we're waiting with bated breath. Maybe I need some more coffee music. And I don't think he can hear me. Maybe not. No, he can't hear me. All right.
I can now. I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
I'm having like a PC meltdown.
That's always fun.
It happens, right? I mean, it's one of those things that happen. It's not the end of the world. You just I rebooted everything and, you figured out. I think, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Yeah. No, everything like went, and it just melted down. You know that happens, like a screen freezes and then another one freezes and then they go.
Oh yeah, and
you're like, I'm gonna eject. I just ejected.
When you get the message that's like, should we wait for this to come back? You're like, oh, I'm in that. I'm out of memory probably, or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty good about keeping. I keep a monitor up of my PC resources and some of those kinds of things, just so I can kind of see what's going on. And there was nothing pointing towards a problem, but everything just. So I just rebooted. I saw you played that clip. Well, I immediately went to my phone, logged into the live so I could kind of keep up. How'd that go?
It's something with that Jared Easley. I'll just play a couple seconds of it because it's once you hear it, you get the gist of it.
Okay.
So that's what I think. Yeah, that's so true. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think this is really important. And if I can just speak about this for a minute, because I've really been thinking about this quite a lot. And
and they just go back. Yeah, that's, and Daniel was saying this typically happens between either one person or another, or because the joke on Twitter was, it's, podcasters say nothing for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I actually heard a podcast start off, I forget which one I was listening to, and they started off their podcast with, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about today.
No, you can't do that.
And I was like, that is not a good way to start your show. I was literally,
I'm a moron, and I didn't prepare, and now you have no reason to listen. I don't know if you talked about this. No, it wasn't, Gary. It wasn't a forced update, but that's a good thought. Windows does that. I say I need to reset my camera as well. But what I don't know if you'd mentioned this, but what's worse about that clip is the host going, yeah, yeah.
Well,
right?
What's hilarious is in the video, every time they go to the host, he's adjusting his microphone. Like, oh, wait, I have to point this up another half an inch.
Kind of playing with it. There is a little bit of that, you're kind of moving it around or whatever.
Yeah.
But I hear that a lot. And that was something I used to do a lot of in my Gallup podcasts. Somebody called it out, and then I went back and started listening. I'm like, yeah, I did do a lot. Because in person, you want to encourage, if that person's talking, like, you want to encourage them, right? But that doesn't, in the recording, that's not good for somebody to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Because a lot of times that is over something, another point they're making, and then you like, well, I can't really hear him, and if you're not on separate tracks, I can't mute the out, and it's just like, yeah, it is. It's hard because you're trained. Like, that's active listening. I want to be an active listener. You
have to stop doing it, though. You have to stop doing it.
I just listened to Scott Johnson does a show called What Was That Like? And it's kind of funny because he's going to be on my show Monday. We're talking about surveys. And I said, you do realize that the answer to every one of your episodes was, that really sucked. Because in his episode, he interviewed a guy that got mauled by a bear. Cool. And I said, the great, because there's so much about that episode that is just great. From his very first question, which wasn't, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I said, the other thing is, when this guy got into the story, I said, you shut up. I said, and it turns out later, you get to the end and you go, of course he is. The guy's a speaker, so he knows how to tell a story, but consequently, Scott just stayed out of his way. It's also great because the NPR style story is, you will not believe this, but this happened to this person. And if you listen to NPR, there's always a second, and this happened. And he did a really good job of hiding the, and this happened thing. So it's always cool when you, when you hear a good podcast and the fact that he just stayed out of the guy's way and he wasn't an, wow. Mine is awesome. When somebody gets done with a question, and that's how I made $1 million in 6 weeks. And I go, awesome. And then I go to the next question, and 9 times out of 10, I cut that out, and I laugh because I'm like, enough with the awesomeness. So,
well, you also, it is a clue. Okay, let's just tell on ourselves for a second and I do this, where you're really just queuing up the next question in your brain, and you're not really listening to what they say. Like, you're not engaged in the current conversation and really listening to, what did they just say? Because there could have been something really, really good there that they said that you just missed. And I think that's the magic of the interview is being able to listen and have enough in your brain to be able to go to the next question when it's ready. By the way, a little dead air, not going to kill anybody, right? No one's going to die. A little dead air is okay. You can cut it out.
Punch you in the face, and you can always edit it out later, like you said. And then Randy makes a great point because you also don't want to encourage somebody who's saying nothing. So that's true too.
Yeah.
But it's early. He usually comes in post-show, so he's got to have something really good. The one and only Bangs Naughty Bits. Mr. Bangs, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing really well. Really, really well.
You sound great.
You can't understand how well I'm doing today.
Oh, well, good.
It's like an old Johnny Carson thing. How well are you doing?
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet.
Well.
Any day you can walk away from is a good day.
That's
yes.
it.
And after doing a little Monty Python humor there,
Yes.
the UK has a public comment period, which is ending this Friday in the House of Lords for the upcoming online safety bill. And any members of the podcast community in the UK may want to submit some public comments regarding the bill that's going through.
So why would they want to do that? Oh, by the way, hold on. Before you do that, Dave, this week you need to work on some like Bang's bumper music. Where
Yes.
That won't be necessary.
Legal
I'm not going to be able to come on shortly.
legal update of the week or something like that. Something to consider. You know how like they do on NBC. Something you should know. So, all right. So Bangs, what are they? Why?
Well, Dave, you don't need to do that. I have deleted my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts, and I'll be deleting my YouTube account shortly.
We're not doing it to promote you, my friend. We're doing it to promote us. We want to say this is
so I won't be able to come in. So you don't make anything specific for me.
This is the last.
But you're going off the grid completely?
This is the last time?
Yeah, I've deleted, as I said, my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram presences, everyone completely.
But does that mean you're going to
YouTube will be going away later this week once I take care of some loose ends.
Wow. Okay. All right. So this is the last time. So
yes.
So well, I understand why. By the way, I do understand why. I get it. So why in the UK? Give us some info. Why in the UK? What should they be? Why?
There's a internet online safety bill which is going through Parliament right now, which is going to add some restrictions to this and curtail that regarding what you can and can't say on the internet, who can monitor you, and restrict online companies as well as to what they can or can't do. Yeah. Now, I'm not from the UK, so I don't want to speak to what is or isn't appropriate, but the online comment period ends Friday for the House of Lords. It's already gone through the House of Commons, if I am not mistaken, which I could easily be.
Right.
I want my house to be named the House of Lords.
That's it. And Gary Bangs wants to know, like, how come you doing this?
Dave, do you really want me to have any comments about anything right now?
Well,
I'm just asking you personally. This is your show. Do you really want me to say anything? I'm coming in with a very specific call to action.
Yes.
There's a legal process going through over here in the corner. And if you're a member of the community in the UK, you might want to comment. I'm not saying what you should say. I'm not telling you who you should say it to.
We always appreciate that. I would say, Bangs, I'd say to Gary, like, just look at the current climate in the United States and some of the things that have happened over the last week, and some of the, especially on some of the social platforms, it'll give you a pretty good indication. So yeah. So Bangs, I wouldn't do it, but I respect the fact that that you've unplugged, and
that's it.
That you listen. That is besides the political part of it. We're going to leave that off because we're not a political show. We don't pretend to be one. We don't try to be one. But from a personal standpoint of, and this just drives me crazy when people get onto these platforms and then complain about the platforms. And I just want to say, leave. Just freaking leave. Like, get off it. If you don't agree with it, if you don't like it, don't use it. Walk away.
I've quit jobs before based on ethical constraints provided.
Oh, right on. Right on.
I have quit jobs because I wasn't being done dirty, but a customer was being done dirty. I told them so. I told them it was illegal, and I told them I quit and I left.
Right. No, I appreciate that.
I don't put up with crap, and I don't make threats.
Yeah, that's a good and listen, I think that's admirable in the sense that, like, you followed up with your conviction, and agree with it or not, that's a whole different story. But I appreciate the fact that you decided to do. Yeah, no, right on. But we've got into this group think idea sometimes in Facebook and whatever, where everybody's got to kind of agree with it, and you don't have to. Like, you can have your opinion, and your opinion was, you know what, I'm out. And I think for some folks that's the answer. For others, it's not. And so I always just appreciate your honesty on that, of just saying, yeah, you know what, I'm not doing it anymore. And so good for you. Good for you. Well, hey, listen, I'm sad you won't be calling us on Saturdays. That makes me sad.
Will you be in the chat room?
I won't have an account, so
he's going to close out.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will be the first. I would stand, but my back hurts. the one and only Bangs Naughty Bits.
Yeah. Well, when you come back, if you come back, when you come back, make sure we're one of the first that you come back to.
Yeah.
Unlikely.
Well, okay. Well, that's fine. That's your choice. But man, I will miss you. So
yeah. All right, man.
And just so you know, StreamYard was doing weird stuff when you got booted. It was screwing up the back stage, among other things.
Yeah,
so
well, I was noticing a little.
It's not
like,
you; it's the rest of the internet that's crazy right now.
Oh, good. Well, my PC definitely locked up, but it could have been StreamYard as well.
We have found the workaround. We're gonna have Bangs listen on Spreaker, and we'll give him a special call.
Could you call in? Can you call in? That would work, wouldn't it?
No, because then I'd have his phone number.
Oh, that's true.
I've called in through your phone before. My phone's number's in your phone somewhere.
Oh.
Dave.
Ooh,
you have to. That goes back a couple years when you had a phone connected.
Oh, okay. We'll have to get
all those.
Listen, all those records are gone. We're never gonna.
Those records are never gone.
Yeah, and Bangs, here's another good question. You are the king of Reddit. Are you going to be on Reddit?
That's a good question.
Never have, in any fashion, bothered to look at who I'm talking to when I'm helping them podcast. I've never looked at their username half the time. I never look into the podcast when they have questions about. I don't look to see if I agree with them or disagree with them. I will continue Reddit just to make sure people continue to have a voice for as long as we're allowed to.
All right.
Nice.
We can find you on Reddit. We'll track you down there.
Here we go.
All right,
awesome.
Man. Thanks,
friend.
Thanks for letting us know.
But if you're in the UK, contact the House of Lords public comment system before Friday.
All right.
Because it could potentially be serious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Stay connected.
All right, man.
Have a great day. Goodbye.
Or don't. We'll see you, Bang. We'll see him again.
I know they are. I don't know, man. He's.
No, I know. But he'll see him again. We'll see him.
I know there's a thing. It's something like the Square. There's like a speaker box in the Square. It's been around since like the 1400s, where you're supposed to be able to stand on this box and just go, "Ladies of the UK, let me explain to you. Lend me your ears," kind of thing. And they have that's now illegal. Like, you can't do the box in the Square thing anymore. Like, they've kind of kiboshed free speech in some areas, according to the No Agenda show. So, and I might.
Well, listen, I think with what's going on here in the United States, and to Bang's point, we're not going to get into it, but with the political climate and all the things that are going on, I think you're going to see some tightening down in the social spaces. So, I think he is a early warning indicator of a lot of things. I mean, he's always come on and tried to get political, and it's been part of his shtick, right? It's part of his shtick. And but he is sensitive to those matters and keeps track of a lot of things that the average person just can't keep track of, just to be honest. And so, we may want to pay attention on some of these things. He has a point. We kind of make fun of it, but he has a point.
Well, and it's always right. You have to make me laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. He educates.
Yeah.
And it's he makes me think. So he got 2 out of 5. So
I'm kind of sad.
I am. I'm kind of like, oh man.
Well,
yeah.
All right. Well.
Daniel says, we'll track you down there. Probably not a good thing to say to Banks.
Well, that was intentional, by the way.
Yeah. Carrie, if you miss Porter Bond, she says, I missed a few weeks. Curious if you guys are talking about Clubhouse. OMG, I'm on it and loving it. You don't have to turn your camera on if you want to join. Again, askthepodcastcoach.com/join. I've jumped into Clubhouse twice, and both times I've kind of went, it's Zoom without your screen on. And there was one group that wasn't bad, and that's where I found out that I'm not allowed to record these, because I really thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fire up Clubhouse, and I can bring it into the Roadcaster via my phone. And then I found out you can't record those. And I was like, even if I put this room is being recorded, that breaks their terms of service. And I thought,
that's part of their terms, right?
Yeah. And I thought it'd be another way. But most of the people I hear say it's interesting. I wanted to see what it was because I couldn't get in. And I finally got an invite. And once I got there, the general consensus is kind of like, well, they get there and they're like, well, it's different and it reminds me a little bit of blah, but in the end they really kind of are just going yeah. So it's like it's neat, but it's I said it's Zoom with the video off kind of. So if you're loving it, I would love to hear, anybody. AskThePodcastCoach.com/join. It's for me, I was kind of like, I thought about that today. I'm like, I should turn that on. It might be something to have on in the background, maybe. But and that's Daniel has a great question. Going back to Banks's kind of point. I've asked multiple times what Clubhouse is doing with our address books, and they won't answer me. Yeah, there's I ran into a cool, I can't remember the website. Gary says, I don't know, Dave. I heard there are real thought leaders on there, executive from LinkedIn. See? Well, here. Oh, she was just here a second ago. Literally, Carrie was just here. Come back. And so maybe I'm just grabbing the wrong rooms. Maybe, and that's where, I don't want to be the old guy that poo-poos everything. And this is why I'm like, all right, just because I was in there twice, it's just remember, and Chris has a great point. Remember, if it's free, you are the product. And I need to finish my, she's grabbing her headphones. Great. I can't remember the website, but it was really cool because they had a headline analyzer. They had a thing that would help you, like you could type in a topic and it'd be like, here's some things that people are searching for, but it was free. And I was like, ooh, this is cool. Because everything was like, join to be a pro. And I was like, I don't see a price here. And I don't like to join things when there's no price. It's one of those things where I'm like, eh. So it's kind of spooky when, and it's very true. When there is no price, you are the product. And
listen, the exclusivity on Clubhouse is a gimmick.
It is.
It's a total gimmick.
Right.
There is no, they're learning from everyone else that if you kind of lock it down, I can't tell you. And I think Gary just did it in the chat room. Like, I need an invite. That whole idea of getting an invite is such a gimmick. And so they're I don't know. I'm kind of with you, Dave. I don't want to be the old guy that goes, man, we've been here and done this, but
yeah,
but we've been here and done this. I know Carrie's waiting. Bring her in.
Well, she says, how do I do this without the echo? Hopefully what there was,
don't watch the live.
Turn off YouTube.
Make sure
because you'll have this weird 30, maybe 15-second delay, something like that. But Carrie Bond.
Carrie, this isn't the first time you've been with us, right?
I think it's the first time she's come on live.
Really?
Yeah, first time live. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. I am not going on video because the house is
it's 10:30 in the morning.
And it's 10:30 in the morning. Well, it's 11. Yeah. No, I wanted to jump in because so I joined on Clubhouse. I got an invite, and I joined. For anyone who goes on there, I highly recommend. There is like a newbie room, and they specifically go on and they kind of walk you through the platform, which if you're any bit tech savvy is pretty self-explanatory. But the really good thing was they were kind of talking about, to your point, Dave, about how, because I initially thought that too, like, well, maybe this will be something I can cross promote, maybe talk about what I do, but then use it on other platforms with the recording. And no, but what they did say is, I guess Clubhouse is very pro sort of cross contamination, for lack of a better word. And they said, especially if, like, for me as a photographer and doing content and whatever, they said, really promote your Instagram and whatever else you have going on. It's not like other social media platforms where they really want to leave you in that world. Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. Twitter wants you to stay on Twitter. They're very pro, like, use Clubhouse as the sort of initial interaction, and then capitalize on that to go off into, get people on your Instagram or your podcast or whatever else you've got going on.
So doesn't that open the door just to people to, like, go in and go, hey, this is my first time on Clubhouse, buy my stuff, and then just talk about their stuff for 20 minutes? I
mean, in theory, yes, but from
people are being smarter than that?
Yeah, and because the culture is very much, it's like a sharing culture. Now, granted, I've only been on for, a day, so I am still very new into it, but the rooms it was like very much, what can I give in terms of value of information? And then the people hosting were very good about moderating and even structuring the conversation. So like I was in one room for social media people, and the woman who had started the room, said, basically when you jump on, please start your sentence with "my question is," because she wanted to keep it that way. People weren't just jumping on and rambling or spamming the group and whatnot. It was like, if you're on stage and you're turned on, you need to be asking a question. And then she was giving everyone sort of an opportunity to chime in if they had something to add. So I found it really interesting. And I think for podcasters, it could be a really good platform to share what you talk about anyway. And so maybe you would start a room, for me, like Key West perspective, maybe I'm starting a room about travel, destination travel in the Florida Keys. I don't know, just as an example. And then people come on and talk and ask questions. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, I also have, if you want more of this, jump on the podcast, keywestperspective.com. So, I just thought it was really cool. And I was curious if you guys had talked about it.
Yeah, we have. You've heard my thing. I was there for, I don't know, 10 minutes. I did the same thing. I went to a newbie room and I said, hey, can I record these? And they went, nope. And I went, okay. And then I went to another room and it just seemed like the person I went into was doing basically a giant sales pitch. And I just went, okay. And it was just a lot of like, well, this is that. And they were kind of trying to disguise it as I'm talking about my industry, but there was a lot of like, just, I mentioned this in my book, blah, 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 blah. And, and I have a course about yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, next. And it was like, huh. So I guess it's going to be back in the day, when I used to teach classes about the internet, I used to say I would start off the class and I go, the internet is a lot like Main Street. I go, on one side of the street, you got the library, you got the peanut store, and you've got a theater. On the other side, you've got hookers and porn stores, back when there were porn stores. And I'm like, yeah, bars. I go, so it kind of depends on what you're looking for, but it's all there, So I think Clubhouse is going to be kind of the same. So it'll be interesting to watch, to see, what they do with your information. And then eventually, bandwidth isn't free. I don't know exactly what the back end is doing, but they've got to make a living somehow. I mean, it's technology. You got to pay a developer somewhere. So
yeah, well, I think it's cool too, because it's so new. It's one of those opportunities like I've had on TikTok. I mean, there's no other photographers on TikTok in my area, so it's like, thanks for the stage. I'll take all the attention. That's great.
Yeah.
So I think Clubhouse could be similar to that in that, maybe it's not something long term, but if you're early on there and you do find success with it, you'd be one of the early adopters and kind of create a little niche in your particular vertical.
Well, I saw somebody that said what they're doing is kind of like what we do. We're here every Saturday at 10:30. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, every Tuesday at this day, I'm going to be in Clubhouse. And I was like, that's not a bad strategy, maybe. Gary says it'd be great if you're trying to do research on a topic. It could be a great place to go hang out. I think this would be a great example. I see this all the time in Facebook where people go, hey, is there anybody else doing an alternative health podcast in here? And I'm like, if only there was a giant search engine we could go to where you could go, But it might be something where you could go in and start a room for, whatever the heck I just said, something about health, and make that room and then go in and talk about it and see if anybody else shows up. So
I think it'll have a limited lifespan. It'll be popular for a while and some folks will figure out how to exploit it. And then it'll get kind of wishy-washy and people will not use it as much. So these are the early days. They certainly, with the exclusiveness of it, they've created some buzz around it, and that's helpful from a marketing standpoint. But I think it does what it's intended to do. You obviously enjoy it and are getting great benefit out of it. So good for you. I don't know if I'd bet long term on it.
And then
Mhm.
Chris Nessie is asking, Carrie, can any user start a conversation or garner some space for a topic? I
Yes.
think so. Yeah, you can make your own room.
Yes.
If you go into somebody else's room, they've got to bring you, basically giving you the stage. Like right now, Carrie is on stage at Ask the Podcast Coach. So, yeah. So it's, again, go over. It's only right now. It's only on iOS. You have to have an invite, of course. And I found that the person has to be. You have to have their phone number, because Sean from Be Your Own Nerd was like, "Hey, I'd like an invite if you got one. I want to kick the tires." And I had his, email address, I had everything else. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying, but when it pulls up the other thing is it pulls up my contacts, and I'm seeing people in my contacts that I didn't know I had in my contacts. And I'm like, where's this coming from?
That happened to me too. I was like, I didn't even know I had this person's phone number.
I'm like, I have Joe Bonamassa's phone number. And I'm like, yes, you do. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I didn't have Sean's in there. So he has sent me his phone number. So I need to now go back, put his phone number in so I can then send him an invite. And I think that's because they're going to text him a link to the app. I think it's a
verification, because they want to make sure that if you're actually inviting someone, that they're, I guess, like a legitimate contact, so that people aren't just adding people willy-nilly, because they're trying to, according to this newbie group thing I was in, they were saying that they really want to curate the people that are being added. And so by making you be a legitimate contact of that person, it raises the chances that you've kind of vetted this person before they're coming on.
So it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
And then Gary makes a great point. If it gets really popular, well, then Facebook will buy it. So
True.
That's it.
Very possible.
What's kind of have you learned anything on there that you're like, ooh, I'm glad that's the reason why I want to go back? Or is it more just the potential?
I think right now, because I'm still new on it, it's just the potential. Yesterday, I was kind of binging and hopping around between rooms and just sort of figuring out, what it was capable of doing. And because I'm in the social media realm, it was really interesting to kind of listen in on that big. It was like 700 people in that room. And the people were just, some of it I'd already heard and known, but it was just kind of cool to get other people's perspective. And I can see it from, like running into situations with clients maybe, and being able to jump in and say, has anybody had this situation? So almost in the same vein of a Facebook group, to be able to be like, I'm in this situation I've never been in. What would you do? Or have you ever been here before? And kind of getting people's takes. So I feel like the value for me right now is in the receiving of information, but eventually we'll shift. Dave and I, you and I have talked about this, about me working on a course and stuff. So I feel like in the future, as I get closer to that, it would be helpful to promote that kind of thing. I think it's got some potential, but I'm definitely not, to Jim's point, it's like it may right. grow and then die a swift death.
Yeah. While it's here, you're going to use it and see what happens, and
you
go
never
from
know.
there.
Awesome. Yeah. The other thing, real quick, I'll mention too, and then I'll jump off. But they're also doing the way I got an invite, for anybody looking for an invite. There's people that do invite trees, for lack of a better phrase. So it's basically like, I'm going to give you an invite, but then when you get your first invite, I've got somebody else that needs it. And so then therefore you agree to give your invite to that person. And then when they get their first invite, if you have someone you want to invite, they will give them that invite. So it's sort of this convoluted invite structure, that I just thought was kind of interesting. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's one way to do it.
I guess.
Yeah.
There we go.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks
guys.
for your insights.
Carrie, thanks for jumping in. Jump in more often.
I will. First time. I know. I should do this. I guess I was always like thinking I had to be on video, and at 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday, if I don't have a wedding, I'm sitting here in my pajamas.
No, Bangs broke that mold a long time ago. So you can just jump in. So good to see you.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
There's a comment here from Daniel. He says, from the Clubhouse terms, you agree to not use the service to record any portion of the conversation without the express, here's the problem, written consent of all the speakers involved. Because I could do a thing, but if I have to have it
Google Doc and have them sign it.
Yeah, but if I wanted to do this for like next week.
Oh, yeah.
So you're allowed to record, but only with the permission of the. So I don't know if I could try it. I need to email them and say, hey, here's what I want to do. Because I think it would be cool to have, because you have to raise your hand to be on stage, and I could sit here and, because I need something else to look at. I've got this chat room, I've got my Trello board. I was like,
Right.
how
You
can I
need
make
another
this
distraction.
how can I have another distraction because I want to look at something else? But it would be interesting. And you know what else is interesting, Jim?
Our awesome supporters.
Our awesome supporters
And
over at.
I do need to refresh. We're 10 minutes. Yeah, we're 10 minutes after the hour. Oh, so good.
And that pour is brought to you by our awesome supporters. And also, let me do this real quick. Also, our awesome friends over at Sweetwater.
Yeah, I got a sticker from you. Yeah,
we're talking about awesome people like, well, first of all, James Jacobson over at Dog Podcast Network. He's giving away $5,000. So if you've got a story that has a dog in it, go over to podcastnetwork.com/101. And if you are a person that is a dog person, just go over to dogpodcastnetwork.com. He's getting ready to launch a new podcast called Dog Edition on the 19th of January. So we've been kind of watching him.
You're going to hear a lot from him here because he's sponsoring the mug starting either next week or the week after. So you're going to hear a lot about the dog stories.
There we go. But we always like to thank our awesome supporters like Kim over at Toastmasters101.net. If you need to develop your voice, reduce your editing time, or improve your content, check out Toastmasters101.net. Greg over at DebtShepherd.com, where he's teaching financial wellness. Shane at Spybrary.com, so you can go over there and get your spy on. Glenn the Geek Hebert at HorseRadioNetwork.com. You'll hear Glenn this Monday on the School of Podcasting talking about surveys. The Indie Drop-In Network. It promotes independent creators by featuring an entire episode of your show. Listeners love it because it's a playlist of shows they probably have never heard of. So check it out. Get your show over there at indiedropin.com. Max Trescott up at aviationnewstalk.com. So if you're into flying around in the skies, check out Max. Ed Sullivan at soniccupcake.com. So if you're like, I'd like to do this podcast thing, but the editing thing, not my thing, go check out Ed. Michael Delaney over at Baby Mountain Radio Productions, where podcasting and hard work are made fun. So check him out, babymountainradio.com. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And there are other ways you can also support the show. Go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/store. And Jim is reading the book, Profit from Your Podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we in the middle of the podcast? I was trying to figure out how to be profitable.
But yeah, so the other thing, well, Jim, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I did. Okay. But I can't remember what it was.
Can't remember what it was? Okay. Well, here's a quick question. This is from Jonathan in the Podcast Movement Facebook group. I'm curious what the average number of episodes one should have in the can before they launch their show.
As many as you're comfortable with. I'm changing that answer, by the way. I used to say, don't worry about that. But if having 5 shows in the can makes you sleep at night, get 5 shows in the can. Like I just go with what you're comfortable with. Do you have to? You don't have to have any in the can. But if it makes you feel more comfortable. Yeah. No, me neither.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. Now, let me just say this really quick. This winter for 2 of our channels, we created a new podcast at Gallup, and then on our Theme Thursday channel, I preloaded 34 podcasts that are daily, all at once. So I spent a whole 2 days getting them ready, posted them. That's freedom, my friend. Like I am doing nothing, and they are releasing every day. You know what happens when you release a daily podcast? You set records of downloads in your stats because they're showing up every day and they're showing up. Does that mean people are listening to them? No. But, and I'm not advocating that, by the way, but the point of that is it made me feel really, really good. At the same time, I edited for the new podcast the entire season. So 34 episodes are done. I don't have to do anything. They're already done. They're recorded, they're edited, they're ready to go. They'll release throughout the year. That's freedom. So do you have to? No. If it makes you feel better, yes, do it.
I got mentioned in a Facebook group about the podcast Rodeo show, and I had like 6 people sign up at once. And the other thing I started, which is great because now I have like a month and a half that you just kind of kick back. So I think that would be my answer is it's almost like the Dave Ramsey thing where you should have at least 6 weeks of emergency funds in the bank.
Yep.
It depends on how long does it take you to do a podcast and how much of a runway do you want? Because the more you have, the more you're like, oh crap, grandma's in the hospital. Oh no. Well, that's all right. I've got 4 in the can. That'll give me, if I do a weekly show, I've got a month's worth of stuff. So I think that's kind of it. The thing I always hate to hear is when people do like 20 episodes without having any kind of like proof of concept that they know it's good or not, because then you find out on episode 2 that we really hate the lightning round, and you're like, oh, we got 18 episodes with the lightning round in it. But it is very cool to kind of go, these are published. I have them scheduled to launch in the future. The other thing I started doing was I started doing the podcast Rodeo show live as a YouTube thing. And that's not, I have to think about that, because the problem is now is I'm too distracted. Where normally I'm listening and I'm writing down notes that I will say at the end of the review. It's a little different. I'm actually listening to the podcast on my phone so I can pause it. So my review is kind of in the middle of the thing. And it's just, I got too much stuff. I'm worried about switching screens and things of that nature. And I was like, I like this because that content kind of fits YouTube. Typically they're short, but that's the other thing I noticed is what I think is a short show is 15 minutes. And I'm like, this is not as short. And I think because I'm trying to give people a fair shake, that I'm listening to longer than their show, where it used to be the minute I was bored, I would, hit the buzzer and they would be out. But yeah, so that would be my advice on that is how long does it take you to do an episode, and how much of a runway do you want to have? Because it's handy, man, when you go, I don't have to think about podcasting, but really what it does is it frees you up to get the next season ready.
I think whatever makes you sleep well at night. Like we have enough trouble sleeping as it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure if you can do that. I was getting ready to pay off some debt one time, and I said, do I invest this or do I pay out to my financial advisor? Do I invest this for the long term or do I pay off debt? And he goes, what makes you most comfortable? Like, listen, if we're doing this kind of thing and you're staying up all night, none of it's worth it. So
right.
what makes you, what makes you good? Hey, the effects, show my screen really quick. Here's the effects of going daily on a podcast. So January through, this is Spreaker stats, by the way, January through December, this is 2020. You can see kind of, this is our weekly release from January through November. And then in December, and not even early December, like I started this probably, I don't know, let's say the 17th, maybe something like, no, 14th of December, and just releasing daily. And you can see we almost doubled, almost doubled our downloads. Now, again, is everybody listening to this? I doubt it, just to be honest. But you can, if you want to, if you want to feel good about yourself,
right?
Daily.
What was your schedule before it was daily?
Weekly. It was weekly.
So
weekly and sporadic.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we don't have a release date. Like we produce a live show 3 to 4 weeks later. That goes into the feed. That goes into this feed. So not regular, not scheduled. They know it's coming. Right. We're gonna do a certain number of episodes every year. But it's a pretty weekly release here on this, looking at it. November went down because we actually ended the season at the end of October, and we did one final show in November. And then I released that in late November, early December, and then we started these daily. They're just 2-minute, all they are 2-minute conversations that we're having, right? So they've been showing up. The question would be, did I lose subscribers over this? Did I have folks who are like, yeah, you're filling up my feed, I'm getting something every day?
Yeah.
Right? When they were used to weekly?
I think it's one of those things where you'll do both. Because some people want a daily 2-minute little nudge or whatever that is. Right. And other people are like, you're feeding me with a fire hose. So you'll attract the people. And that's where I was working with a client this week, and it's a show about kind of being an actor. And he was saying how he kind of has 2 different audiences. And I said, well, which audience do you want? I said, because make the content for that audience. And he goes, yeah, but the current audience may not really want that information. I go, this is where it's your show. I go, granted, you attracted the wrong audience by maybe putting out the information that wasn't niche enough for the audience you're trying to get. I said, so when you start doing this more stuff that's really geared towards a certain type of audience, that audience is going to leave, but in theory, the new audience will show up. I said, so don't freak out if your numbers go down for a bit. It'll come back. So,
well, and you don't know. I mean, this is a good indication of just these numbers don't tell me if somebody's actually listening. Are they getting listened to? They're downloading for sure. I mean, we know that. Are they actually listening to them? I guess there could be some other platforms that could tell me that. I guess I could go into Apple Podcasts, right, and see some of those stats of how far they're being listened. Maybe that's the next. They're only 2 minutes long. So I guess that's the next, what I need to do is go into Apple Podcasts and see.
Go into Apple, or you can also get that from Google and Spotify.
We don't do, for whatever reason, the Gallup podcasts don't make it to Google at all. I mean, they make it there, but people don't listen to them there. Our numbers are ridiculously small on Google. I don't know why. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. I have, I was mentioning the podcast Rodeo show. That show is gangbusters on Spotify. Like no show I've ever had, hundreds of downloads. And I was like, we're the school of podcasting. It's crickets on Spotify. Like,
can you get Spotify stats? This is how much I care about my stats, by the way. I don't even know.
You can, let me, if it's, I believe it's podcasters.spotify.com. Let me see here. Yeah, I had it there. Doggone it. It started to autofill. Let me share my screen. And
our HelloFresh just arrived, by the way. Nobody needs to know that, but I've been getting alerts that the FedEx guy just dropped off the HelloFresh.
Okay, so if I go into my catalog, and then again, this is podcaster.spotify.com. And if I look at, I'm trying to find here it is, Podcast Rodeo Show. So you can actually see right there, 228,000 listens on the last episode I can see, and this is where it's kind of weird, 110 starts, 27 streams, and 95 listens. And if I remember right, listens are people that listen for longer than a minute. I know they're not IAB, but there's a weird thing where one is like a click and one is somebody listened longer. So for whatever reason, I'm getting, around anywhere from 30 to 100 listens on, and what's interesting, I noticed this one has more. This one, an episode called Proudly ADHD at Work and in Business, has 95 listens, where the rest are kind of in the 20, 30 range. That one I promoted on Facebook. And I should be doing this all the time, but I was like, oh, yeah, this is coming out. I should put this here. And because they have a great title, Proudly ADHD at Work and in Business is the name of their podcast. And people are like, wow, that's really niche. And I'm like, yep. And then in the review, I put, hey, your audience is ADHD, so you need to get to the point like nobody's business. Like you can't dilly-dally. Your audience, by definition, has a hard time paying attention. So, but yeah, so if I go, and I think if I click on this episode, yeah, I can see where, I had 100% listening at the very beginning, and wow, I'm down at the 4-minute mark. I'm at 16%. So I lost a lot of people. Now, this is also where you don't get too worried. In the first 21 seconds, the first minute, I lost 70% of my audience. That might be people skipping, because the intro of that show is the same. But you'll see where once we get down here wow, that is depressing though. 20, when I get to about 20%, I keep them till the end of the show. Although at the very end, once I start promoting, that drops. Wow, that's depressing right there. But you can see I started off, the average listen was 25 seconds. The first quarter.
You kind of have the listener rodeo show going on there.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing to your show that you do to the shows that are on there. In other words, they're giving it 20 or 25 seconds and then they're dropping.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And the thing that's nice about Spotify is you do get demographic data. So I can see here that it is primarily male, 70%. The biggest age range is 28 to 34 out of the United States. And they used to show what their favorite music was. I guess they're not, or it's in a different spot. But so you can get that information, but be careful what you ask for, kids. Like, wow, look, my whole audience is dumping me. It's like, whereas if I go into, is Ask the Podcast Coach not on here? That would be sad. Well, there you go. I'll have to change that. That's really odd. But if I go into here, like here, the School of Podcasting, I'm getting 14 listens in the past.
Yeah, that's about what I get too.
Yeah, and in the previous episode that's been out since December, got 3. Now, if I go in and see how far do those 3 people listen, I can see about 13 minutes, and then they just it's weird. Somebody went here and went back and listened twice. So you can see that in these graphs where you'll have like a flat line and then all of a sudden a little blip. And that usually means that somebody either again, they hit skip or something. But yeah, this whole, like, I want to know how far people listened. Be careful what you listen, what you wish for.
Yeah. You may figure out they're dumping you in the first 15 seconds.
Are you familiar with the Darknet Diaries at all?
No.
I am interviewing that guy. I'm interviewing this guy. He interviews hackers in some cases, and he interviews the hacked. And what's interesting, it's like Ira Glass wanted to know, he's got a really great name, Darknet. So right there, that kind of, you know what it is, but you kind of don't know what it is. So you kind of like, ooh, I wonder what that's about. And then diary. So it's stories about people, like the one I listened to. There's a guy, there are people, they're called penetration experts. And I'm like, that sounds naughty. But they get hired to, like, a company will go, we need you to hack us. Yeah. Like do your worst and hack us.
A better name for them, by the way, is pen testers. That's what we call them in the industry, because that sounds so disgusting.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Pen testers. That's what they're called.
And so it's a guy and he'll interview these pen testers. And the one guy's got like a Russian, an ex-Russian KGB kind of guy. He's got a Navy SEAL team, and they just go in and you like, what? So here, again, it's information you can't get anyplace else. It's interesting. It makes you think. It kind of makes you wet your pants. And the guy's getting, I think, $14,000 a month on Patreon. Yeah. And he's a guy that's just, and what's interesting about it is because in some cases you don't want to be on his show because it's like, hey, guess what? You got hacked. He's super duper, and it's the Darknet Diaries. He did say, because I'm doing tons of research on this guy. He actually, and this is where it's, again, kind of freaky. He used to do video, and somebody was able to identify the outside through his window and tracked him down to his job. Oh. And that's when I was like, no, that's so.
That's why Banks never comes in on video, right? Yeah. I mean, that's that kind of stuff. You could find me pretty easily.
Yeah.
Not that you'd want to.
Gary said, we finally found Banks' show. That's it.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah. No, I've heard him. It's that or Banks is putting on a voice when he comes on here. So anyway, so I'm going to be interviewing him, but here's an example of, I have to realize I'm asking him, how did a guy with no audience end up with a show that's getting like and he's very transparent. I think he's getting 300,000 downloads per episode. And he's actually started monetizing in 6 months. Wow. So there goes my 3 years theory out the window.
Well, but you have some outliers.
Right. But the thing is, I have to, and that's one of the things I'm doing today. I'm interviewing him on Sunday, is I have to really focus on, because I mean, hacker stuff is exciting, but it's not going to help my audience grow their audience. So I'm really going to be focusing in on how did you make your show good? How do you promote it? Things like that. But, so
that sounds interesting.
Yeah. If you are familiar with the show and you go, oh, Dave, ask him this, Dave at schoolofpodcasting.com. Man, this day has been going so incredibly quick. But yeah. Carrie says, have you ever watched Homeland? They caught some terrorists because of the title shown in the background on the floor. The tile. Yeah. Interesting.
It's cool. Amazing the things you give away in your backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So
Jim, are you still on vacation?
No, we're back. We're back. Mike Uyghur's back. We're in the saddle over there at Home Gadget Geeks. We talk a little bit about what's going on with Bitcoin, because that's been nuts over the holidays. And then we kind of go through the Christmas gadgets we got, which is kind of a ton of fun. So just kind of an update, because Christmas is a gadget giving season. Of course it is. So
is the tree still up at your house?
No, tree is down. We took that down last week.
Yeah, I think mine's coming down. It's so pretty. I don't want to take it down. But yeah, find Jim over at theaverageguy.tv. I stepped all over your domain. Sorry about that.
No.
You've already heard this week I'm going to be talking about surveys. And if anybody has any feedback, if you've ever done a survey and what you learned from it, how you did it, I would love to hear about that in the post show. Full disclosure, if you actually come on and say that to where I can hear it, you'll probably be in Monday's show, because we're talking about surveys and the fact that it helps make your show better if you do it right in some cases. So that'll be Monday's show. And like I said, then in 2 weeks, I'll have my interview with Jack from Darknet Tires, which is going to be fun. But we're here every Saturday at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. Thanks to the chat room. Thanks to Mark over at podcastbranding.co. And if you're listening to this later and you want to ask a question and you're not here, just email me, Dave at schoolofpodcasting.com, and we'll have your question on the air. But stick around for some post show. We might talk a little megaphone, since we're talking privacy and piracy and people snooping and things like that. So stick around.